we are connecting with our children in a safe space where we are playing. Children love doing clay, and because it's so mushy and messy, and then they can mold it and let it dry, and then they can paint it. If parents take the time to do those things and are investing their energy and time with their child in that way, the connection between you and your child will be amazing. Majority of those behavior problems will disappear.
Hi everyone, this is Tim at The Natural You. Today I have a very interesting guest for us. Her name is Lauren Snailham. She is a clinical psychologist and works out of Durban in South Africa. Quick intro into how I came across Lauren. My sister is also in a similar field, working with children in a psychological setting, and she had been on a course which involved what I understand is nature therapy, and she was telling me about this, and she said, Tim, you'd love it, it'd be brilliant. And I said, well, you gotta send me her details and see if she'll be interested in coming on the podcast. After toing and froing for a while, we finally got Lauren, who's super busy, to come and spend a little time with us. Lauren, welcome to The Natural You, and we're really looking forward to what you have to share about your work and how that relates to nature and how we can all benefit from that. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Thank you for having me on the show. I have always loved being in nature. So I think even from little, I remember having spades and all the garden tools and being stuck in nature. And even to this day, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or there's too much going on, I know if I go and work in the garden for an hour or two, I feel much calmer and at peace. And so in my work with children as well, so I think I always wanted to be a psychologist. And since in my training from masters and then moving through to do internship, and then I did my community service at a state hospital, there isn't a lot to use when you're working with children in particular. So we've got a desk and a cold hospital floor, clinic floor, the walls and the window, but there's very little else that you can use in the rooms. And so right from then I would use lots of stories. I'd have my own little sandbox that I would bring, and I've got lots of little miniatures and trees and vegetation, and I would give them the space to be able to create and be in my office space. And I think that opened my mind to be not often as psychologists, we're not trained to look at the variety of things that we could be using in therapy with children that allows them to open up parts of themselves that they wouldn't usually. So to sit and draw, a certain child might be very expressive with regards to drawing or using that as a medium to express themselves, whereas another child, it's foreign to them and they need to be in the garden and they need to be in sand or in clay or doing something where they feel more connected to their environment. And so that's what's happened as the years have gone by. I started working from home. I've been in practice for about 18, 19 years now, and I started working from home about 15 years ago. And that really made things freeing for me in many ways, because when you work from home, you can make as much noise as you like with the children, and we could go into the garden a lot more than what I was ever able to do before. And when you open up that space, it's just incredible to see what flows from that and how the relationships change. So it's just gone from, and then I started doing, reading up a lot on different modalities that therapists can use with children. And then I started teaching them. So I run online workshops which is what your sister attended. I'll learn about a particular technique. So I was doing it before I realized that it was something that was researched and documented.
So you just came by that intuitively?
Yeah, because it was just natural for me to be in that space. So I used to have a pond in my garden. So I would fish with a lot of the boys that I would see. So we would sit and we would fish and we would talk while we were fishing. And then the one boy said he liked planting plants. So his mom bought seedlings and we gardened for a session. So then I read up about nature therapy. And then from there, I decided I wanted to, if you're going to teach it or run a workshop on it, you need to be backed up. by research and information. So I made sure I had all of that, and then I ran the workshop, and it was incredible. And it was an online workshop, which was interesting because you think you wouldn't really be able to do a nature-based workshop online, but it was about removing yourself from the space. So the activities we did, going and standing at the window, looking out the window, feeling the wind, and how just that little bit of natural energy and connecting with the outdoors shifts something in you. So it was just really beautiful. It's just not, I think, because it's not a structured technique, it's quite open ended. I think some therapists are quite nervous of it. But that, I suppose, also goes to the idea that everything happens indoors nowadays.
Yeah, and that just strikes me as, like, even the name clinical psychologist, it's clinic, in the clinic's environment. It's a clinical,
Yes,
you're trying to remove all the extraneous stuff and then focus in on the problem. It's a very kind of reductionist mindset, isn't it? It's like, well,
100%.
we're going to find that thing, and we're going to have a stark light and a table and a floor because it needs to be germ free, and it's in that hospital setting, and that sort of comes in. And we're not designed to be in those spaces.
No,
And so
absolutely
it
not.
makes total sense when you take someone out into nature. And we've had people on the program. One of my friends, Tona Tellefson, she had in her, next to her practice, they had a courtyard, and they opened up a garden, and a nature garden, and they brought in teens that were struggling, and they were just gardening, and they just blossomed in the space, and
Yes,
all the social anxiety that just kind of melted away. And just putting,
absolutely.
we talk about when we walk, when we have like talking therapy and we walk
Mm.
alongside someone rather than sitting across them. It's collaborative, it's together. We're, rather than working towards or with someone, it's just like it's in partnership. It's like alongside, we're doing it together. This is a fun thing, and so you can just be in much more natural state, and they open up, I'm sure.
Definitely. I mean, and whether it's fishing or whether it's playing cricket. I mean, I play cricket in the garden with some of the boys. Even that, because it's where's the ball's going to land, and it flies over the fence, and then we've got to get another ball, or it lands up in the tree, and we've got to try and negotiate how we're going to get the ball out the tree. It doesn't matter where it is, what you're doing in that space, or jumping on the trampoline, or I'm having a turn on the trampoline, but we outside, we under the tree. It's just a very, very different experience. You've got fresh air. You don't have shoes on. I mean, I have astroturf grass in my office, the thick one, so it feels like you're walking on grass, and that's what we sit on in our sessions because it's just more sensory. It just helps you relax. And I watch the children just stroking their hands up and down the grass, and then you get other children who will sit on it, and it completely overwhelms them because they're used to things being very clinical. So it's just amazing to see. I think we move things when we talk about being in a room where there's a desk and there's a chair and kind of just the standard toys that a child might use, and they lose interest in those things. You can, a lot of the time, you can only get so far with a child because talking therapy doesn't work for children. Play therapy works. And so they need a medium that makes sense for them, that they can connect with and that they can express themselves through. So I use a lot of clay. We use a lot of sand. Um, we use drawings and now nature-based and Lego. But even with all of that, it can be done outside. And that's what the book that I'm currently doing is about. It's combining all the different therapies and saying we don't need one modality. We can have a number of different ones, but we need the child to have the opportunity to gravitate towards what's comfortable for them and what makes sense for them.
So it sounds like it's like nature. It's super dynamic. It's open. Things arise and change in an instant. Like you mentioned, the wind. You're trying to get the ball out the trees, and now
Yeah,
suddenly the wind comes in. And what can we find some sticks to poke the ball out the tree? So you're looking for that and finding ways around a problem, and that
absolutely.
then creates its own talking points and experiences for them.
Yes. Many years ago, I think it was before COVID, because I see a lot of children, and I decided I wanted to do a gorge walk. So I'm very fortunate. I live right on the edge of Kloof Gorge. And at that time, we were allowed to just climb over the fence and go. And so I arranged for another psychologist to come with, and my dad came with, and we arranged with all the parents that there were about 15 children. We were all going to meet early in the morning. We'd pack backpacks with lunches and juices and everything. We were going to head down, hike down to the river. It's right at the bottom of the gorge because it's beautiful down there. And we were going to spend the day down there. And I had planned all these marvelous psychological activities that we were going to do to build confidence and social skills and all these things. And then we were going to hike back up at the end of the day. Well, we got down to the bottom of the gorge into the river. Not a single psychological activity that I had organized and structured was done because they were all chatting and laughing and jumping off rocks and swimming in the river and getting into little groups and having a chat and making friends with each other. And I specifically chose these children because they were battling socially and they'd experienced a lot of bullying. But it was the most incredible day when we were coming back out and we had to climb up a hill to get back to the top of the mountain. There were so many parts of their character that were tested in that climb because some of their water had run out, so they had to share. There was moaning and groaning and frustration and all the emotions that they experience in real life that would not naturally be evoked in therapy. And so we end up talking in therapy about times that it happens. It's not often that it's in the moment that it's happening. And we can say, what is going on? Okay, let's think about this. Let's talk about this. Focus on what we can do to keep all your feelings are valid. You're allowed to be frustrated and angry that we've got to still climb for another half an hour. But what can we do to get through it, kind of thing. But it was this joining together of all these children and this universal feeling like we're all battling here, but we've had an amazing day. And so that for me, whether it's individually, we're working with children in those settings, or whether it's in nature, in groups, it's so incredibly rich. And the thing with nature is that it's naturally evocative. It naturally provokes or soothes or whatever it needs to do. It just naturally does that. And then the person responds in the way that we can work with, and we can try and understand the child a little bit better, not just children, adults as well.
It resonates so much. I've done some men's work, and we take guys out to nature, and I think I might have mentioned on the podcast before in another episode, one of the events we were doing was we started hiking up this mountain, and I was at the back bringing up making sure everyone was all right, and my co-leader was up front opening up the path. And I was thinking, like, what do you think you're doing? You got nothing to offer these guys. How do you think this is going to help people, just taking them out into nature? And, we had events planned like you have all these things planned to perhaps open them or challenge them in different ways. And by the time we got to the top of the first peak, a guy had just broken down, and he just like had this huge emotional upwelling and outpouring. And I just realized I don't have to do anything. I just have to take them into nature, and she'll do the work, and you can have certain activities planned, but it doesn't always work out that way. So yeah, that really echoed for me. I'm just curious, how old were those kids that you took down into the gorge?
They ranged from 9 to 15. And that was also incredible to see because the older kids were helping the little kids and the little ones were looking up to them. It was just an incredible day. And I had caps made for them, and we had shirts made that said connect with you, others, and nature. So they really felt like a sense of belonging. Like they still to this day, I see some of those children pop in every now and again for a check-in, and they still talk about the time that we did that.
And I just, I think of our schooling system, which is like you stick with your year group, your age group, and there's this lack of integration, up and down, like helping. I mean, some schools might have like, you can have the mentor kind of program and helping people, but it's usually, sporadic or just for a week or something like that.
Yes.
And to have that, and I think that's where I see there's a lack of a breakdown in community, and playing across different age ranges. Like, I grew up on a farm, and we'd often have groups of kids coming over, and my sister is a born school teacher, so she would just marshal everyone from age 2 to 17, and we'd be playing games and doing things and exactly that. And that builds our social tools.
Absolutely.
Because if some kids breaking the rules and not playing along and spoiling for other ones, they just get pushed out the way, and it's like, well, we don't want to play with you. And now they're suddenly on their own, and they realize, actually, I can't be an idiot. I need to maybe I need to be kind too. Or if someone's being a bit too physical, others go, actually, that's not okay. And so there's this, and if we don't have that, and we just grow up in our little families, then how do we know how to negotiate these social environments? You go and work in a big workplace, and they're all different rankings of
Mm-hmm.
social status or whatever, and where do I fit in and how do I negotiate that? And if you've never had that, you've just had a teacher and peers, then how do we build those skills and resilience in that area?
No, definitely, definitely. But I mean, then it comes back to nature, where it's this idea that we spend all our time in the classroom and focused on doing the work and academically getting things done. And it's such a minor thing, but what I don't, yeah, I think to a lot of schools it would feel that way. But we went through a bit of a heat wave about a month ago, where the temperatures were like skyrocketing, and the kids were all. So I said to my daughter, I said, "Are you allowed to take your shoes and socks off on days when it's hot like this?" And she said, "No, we have to keep our shoes on." And I think even that's bizarre. I think when you're on the field, like, and I would love to challenge a lot of the schools to try this for a couple of months, that if children took their shoes off when they were going onto the field and they played on the grass, feet on the ground, pushing into the ground, having all these sensations physically and from a tactile point of view, I wonder how that would shift things when they then return back into the classroom after break. There's
Huge,
so many
huge.
different things that, I mean, even having plants. I mean, was going to get on a mission, because I get on these missions every now and again, where I was going to try and educate, because I do a lot of workshops for teachers and parents as well. And I was going to say to them, you need plants in your classroom. Um, just that creates a different energy within that space. But if we're talking about a lot of, like, when we're saying that, I think we've got this mindset that we need to have structured activities. Me on my hike with the kids, when you went in the mountains, the school with the curriculum they have to do. But with nature, and I've realized this from all the reading and from my experience, how do I put this? It challenges and teaches lessons without any effort. There's, whether it's you running in the garden and you stand on a thorn and you've got to deal with the pain and you've got to deal with the discomfort and asking for help. It's little things like that. I mean, I've had children that I've seen where they struggle to show vulnerability, and yet we'll be playing and they'll get hurt. They'll run into a rock or they'll stand on a thorn, and they almost too nervous to show that soreness and that vulnerability. And that is such a beautiful opportunity to step in and sit with them through that and validate them that we all get hurt, and it's okay to show that vulnerability. I had another little boy many years ago going down my driveway. I've got rocks. I've got a garden going all the way down my driveway, and going in that garden, I've got rocks. So I positioned them so you can step from one to the other and eventually get to the bottom of the driveway, where there's a very big rock, which was just there because I wasn't going to get it there. And the goal is always to get from the top down to that very big rock at the end. And I had a little boy around with his mom, and he was about 4. And he didn't want to come into the office with me, and he was feeling quite nervous. And so I said to him, do you want to come and walk on the rocks with me? And then immediately they get curious, because it's out in the open, so it feels safer than going into a room you've never been in before with a lady you've never seen before in your life. And so we went and we stepped on the rocks. But some of the rocks were quite close together and some are further apart. So he needed to ask for my help, or I would be able to say to him, put my hand out and say, would you like me to help you across? And he wasn't sure, but then he would reach his hand out. And then there were moments where he was able to get across big rocks on his own. And I would be able to validate that strength and that courage and that bravery. By the time we had finished doing the trek down the rocks, he was very happy and settled and ready to go into the office. So what could have been 3 weeks worth of trying to connect within 4 walls happened within 15 minutes in the garden.
And I mean, evolutionarily, that's the environment we're supposed to be in. That's the environment we learn in. That's how we're used to. That's how our brains get stimulated and learn, and all these things. So it's we kind of, in some ways, I love what you're doing, but it's almost like some ways it's sad for me. It's like that kids we have to use it, like, even like, there's play therapy, nature therapy. I mean, isn't that a birthright? Isn't play a birthright?
Yes,
Isn't being silly when you're a kid a birthright? Isn't putting your toes into mud like an intrinsic thing that we should all be able to do? So it's like, I love it, but I'm also like, it makes me kind of feel quite kind of bereft if we have to use. I'm grateful we have people like you using these tools and bringing people into this and helping those kids. It wouldn't be marvelous if we could just expose more parents to be able to doing that themselves because they probably never had it. You know, if you're only used to running on
Absolutely.
concrete, then, and the one time you did run in the grass, you got a thorn. You go, well, I'd rather run in the concrete with shoes on because on the grass there's thorns and it's dangerous.
Yeah. But then instead
You
of
know, there might
having
be a snake in there, or what's going on. So nature becomes dangerous,
Mhm.
and so we were afraid of it. And while you were talking about the kids doing their own thing, I remember building forts and doing stuff, you know, out in nature. And now, when if a bunch of kids went into a local woodland or area, grassland, and started building stuff, the local people would go, "Oh, you can't do that; it's dangerous,"
Mm,
and you know, blah blah. And you're destroying stuff, or you shouldn't be here. You should be at home. Why aren't you supervised?
yeah.
And so we almost like criminalized to a degree kids going out and doing that
For being free. For
for being
being
free.
free. But you wonder that if there was more, if there's a worry around getting hurt, and because I thought about this, is that because I live close to the gorge, I worried a lot about snakes with my because we get spitting cobras in our garden. So I worried a lot. But even with that, there would just need to be an adult presence. And that's a beautiful thing anyway. So it's not about helicoptering, it's about just being present in that space with them. And when I was doing the nature therapy workshop, one of the interventions we speak about is when you're needing to do work with a parent and a child, when there's a struggle with connection. And there's incredible activities and ideas of getting a parent to just walk with the child in the garden and just being curious about what they're seeing and what's under their feet and connecting with them. And I've often said this to parents before that if your child is struggling or feeling disconnected or overwhelmed, whether it's one child in your home or three or four, if you've got lots of children, if you walk out, if you say to your children, right, we're going outside for 10 minutes, and you walk outside and you sit on the grass with them, I guarantee that the level of stress and overwhelm will drop by at least 50%, if not more, because all of a sudden you're in a different environment. There's natural elements around. They are distracted by other things that are going on. Whether you take a walk in the garden and you're lifting up rocks to look for nunus, and or you picking flowers, or you counting or looking at all the different trees that in the garden, it doesn't matter what it is. It's a distraction from the overwhelm, and everyone gets to breathe and be, and then you can go back and do what you need to do after that. There's so many ways of helping parents. So when you talk about how sad it is that it's almost a child has to come to therapy in order to play in the garden or play in the sand or do something that is enriching for them in a natural, inherent way, that is what I think a goal of mine is to help parents understand that they I think everyone wants a quick fix. Everyone wants us to say, this is what you need to do to get your child to listen. This is what you need to do to get your child to do better in school. And it's and if that doesn't work, then there's time out and there's a hiding and there's removing this and this is what's going on. What parents don't realize is that if we are connecting with our children in a safe space where we are playing, and that's whether that is Play-Doh or sand in a tray within the household or kinetic sand, any natural thing, even clay. Children love doing clay because it's so mushy and messy, and then they can mold it and let it dry, and then they can paint it, and they've got their bowl or whatever they've made. If parents take the time to do those things and are investing their energy and time with their child in that way, the connection between you and your child will be amazing. Majority of those behavior problems will disappear. But instead there's very little connecting time, and there's more trying to discipline, and we're trying to intervene when we've got the problems instead of trying to prevent the problems by putting in the work earlier on.
Again, it's that reductionist mindset. It's like, let's find that we're going to fix that behavior. We need to fix that
Exactly.
behavior, not the underlying issues that created behavior in the first place. So we
Absolutely.
see that all the way through healthcare. You know, it's rife really, and a whole healthcare model is built on that.
Yeah.
And so I really call it the disease care model because it's not healthcare, it's not holistic. And I just love what you're saying there. I wonder if those parents, I mean, some of the work that I've been involved in has come across that some people have never really been able to play, never had that opportunity to
Yeah.
really be silly and throw leaves up in the air and giggle and fart and whatever, make silly, be a kid. And they had to grow up so soon. Kids have to grow
Mm-hmm.
up so soon. And, if a 4-year-old is walking around like a duck and making funny noises, they might be told to stop being silly.
Yeah, or that's irritating.
Yeah, that's irritating. Stop that. And they're literally having fun and playing, and which is absolutely beautiful. And it doesn't suit we're watching football or whatever we're doing, or, having an adult conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid's seen as annoying, and the parents don't value it because their pops never had that. And they're stuck as parents because
Yeah.
they've never been silly. They weren't allowed to be silly. They weren't
So
allowed
it's
to
like a
play.
foreign concept for them.
Yeah, and even going into nature. If you grew up and you were denied access to nature, why would you value it?
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I agree
So,
with that.
so I
So I
think
suppose it's
I
about
wonder.
educating. It's about educating, and I think that's the thing. It's about letting people know what the options are. Like it's not, and that's I suppose what I'm doing with in my training and the courses that I do is that it doesn't have to be a specific way. There are other ways of doing things. And try. And I say that because in a lot of the parenting workshops that I run, it'll be, sitting on the floor with your child when they're having a tantrum. You don't have to fix it. You just need to be there. You just need to be present. That's all you need to do. And whether it's going for a walk or, and that's why I think children open up so beautifully in play therapy because we play. And so whether I remember I've climbed in a tent and we've zipped up the tent before with a little girl and it's had all those colorful balls and then we've shot off to France and then we get out the tent and then we in France and then we deal with whatever we got to deal with in France and then we get back in and then we shoot off to the next place we do. There's so many, even I've got a swing in my office, a cocoon century swing, and the one child swings around and he lands on different planets and I've got to be a different animal that receives him at that planet. If you play in that way, and not every adult is comfortable doing that, and I completely understand that, but if there's a willingness to see what you would be comfortable with and to try that. So I don't particularly love playing Barbies, and my daughter's obsessed with Barbies, but I can play salons, she calls it. So I can brush hair and plait hair, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing the hello, let's go shopping and we have conversations. If your child sees that you're willing to try, whether it's standing outside while they're climbing the tree and giving them guidance and just being willing to catch them if they fall or if they hurt themselves, or being willing to go and look for bugs under the rocks, or go and dig holes. Sometimes just digging holes can be fun. I saw this beautiful thing on Facebook today where someone had taken tires and filled them with stones. So it was all raised, and then they'd made bridges from one tire to the other, all in the garden with all the different rocks. There's incredible things that you can do. I remember during COVID, my daughter decided two of her teddies needed to be married, and we built a whole ark out of sticks and flowers, and the teddies had a wedding outside in the garden. So it's about being willing to step a little bit out of your comfort zone. You don't have to step completely out of your comfort zone, but just a little bit out. And it's not only going to mean the world to your child, but something will spark in those adults that try and step out a little bit. They'll
That's
feel
kind of where I was
something.
thinking. And it's like the healing isn't just for the child, it's for the adult too.
Absolutely.
If they are uncomfortable with it, I have to ask why, And
Yes.
so if they are, it's like if you feel uncomfortable with, I'm just using your example, like if you're feeling uncomfortable with Barbies, what is it about that is like uncomfortable for you, but you're happy doing the hair thing? And so
Yes,
we
because it's
all have those
relaxing.
resistance thing. Yeah, so we all have the resistances, and we go like, okay, well, I guess there's something there, and I guess my advice or my tendency is to, when I meet those resistances, sometimes I just shy away, but then other times I
Yeah.
go, why is that a little bit triggering for me? Okay, let me lean into that a little bit. Okay, let me try that, like you said, just a little bit. Let me do that little thing. Okay, oh wow, that's bringing up some different sensations in me. I wonder what that's related to.
Definitely.
And then getting more comfortable with those sensations, and then that then builds resilience, but also curiosity in
Absolutely.
our own emotions. Yeah, that sounds fascinating, and I think that as adults, we all need healing too.
Mm,
Perhaps missing out on some of the things that we were supposed to do, some of the tasks that we were supposed to do as children. Being with children allows us to do those and go back and reclaim
definitely.
those. which then
Definitely.
allows us then to build onto those.
And we need to create space for that. Um, we definitely need to create space for that. So, whether that is saying to the child, what would you like to do in the garden today? Or I'm going to go and spend a bit of time outside. Can you come and help me with this? Or whatever it is, but it's about being willing and creating space for doing that. And remember, with anxiety, the more there's no way of getting rid of anxiety because it's one of our emotions, but it's one of the mental health issues. That's a massive problem at the moment with children. If one of the biggest things is about building confidence and about taking yourself out of your comfort zone, and the more you're able to do that, the more tolerance you build, and the more there's less self-doubt there is, the more confident you are, and so the anxiety lessens to a large degree. So there's so many mental health disorders out there because there is this lack of connecting. There's this lack of putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation every now and again and being able to survive it and tolerate it, and then realize, okay, I did that. I climbed a tree. I can do big things. I went on a walk with all these children and they liked me. There's so many different things. And
It's removing the
self-mastery, I built a
control.
fort.
It's removing the
Yes,
control, creating a more dynamic, rich environment where things are, and realizing that you're actually part of it and can be in it and still be yourself and still be part of this big thing. And that allows for connection and go like, well, why am I so anxious? There's like other things going on here, other bigger things going on. Or
exactly.
that kid's got bigger problems than me. Or, or actually,
Yes,
all those
yes,
kind of things. And just feeling, I guess that's one of the spiritual traits is being open to something bigger than yourself.
yes, yes,
And I think nature is the one place where I think anyone from any background will be able to appreciate that is feeling
definitely.
both small and big at the same time. It's that.
Yes,
Um, yeah, I
definitely.
mean, obviously, we're both huge advocates for being in nature, and I'm curious to learn about a little bit more about your workshops, Lauren, and I know you've also written some books. If you could just tell us about those a little bit more, so that the listeners can get insight into some of the resources they might be able to get um, from you, or point in different directions that have helped you in the past too.
Okay, okay. When I was when I was doing my community service at Arkekon Hospital, because I was in a cubicle and there wasn't much space, and because we were overworked, there was quite a lot of children that referred that would have to be seen in group settings. So, in one particular stage during my time there was a lot of children that had been abused, and I needed to do a group intervention. So I had bought books over the years from the UK and America, but I found that a lot of those stories, that the children that I was working with, they couldn't relate to those stories. So my first story was The Brave Little Birds, and so I quickly wrote it out, and then I found an interpreter, a nurse, and I asked her to please come join me for the group. And I read the story, and she translated it, and it was just incredible to see the way that the children responded. So it speaks about it's a bird family, and the mom goes off to work in the morning to find worms, and the dad goes off to find some more grass for the nest, and the little birds are flying around, and an eagle comes along and befriends them and then encourages them to go to his nest. And none of my books, so there's 23 of them, none of them go into detail. They all kind of give an idea of what might be going on, but without detail. So a child will project their own ideas on what might be happening or grow their own meaning from that. And then all the books will talk about coping skills in them. So the little birds get quite afraid and they are hurt, and then they manage to get away from the eagle and they fly back to their nest, and they speak about what they went through. So that book's about disclosures. That was the first story that I wrote. What was so beautiful about that is a little boy that was in that group came back about 8 months later. He was in the outpatients department, and he came to say hello to me. And he said to me, and he has to testify in court. And he said to me, I was a brave little bird. And that was just incredible, because we don't realize how a simple story for a child who's in such a horrible place or lonely place can sit with them and hold
Mm.
so much meaning for them. So then after that, I just carried on doing stuff, got on bullying and feelings and parental separation and all the different ones. And then I'm in the process now of doing a book about because I train therapists on using Lego in therapy, clay in therapy, drawing, sand. And now I'm gonna, I think my goal is for them to see that they can use a whole bunch all together. We don't
All
have to use
different
one
tools.
specific
And
way. So you can take the
wow,
Lego into
brilliant.
the garden. You can read a
Yeah.
story in the garden. You can go and draw on the trampoline. I've often taken that chalk and we draw out on the driveway.
Mm,
Yeah, there's so much that you can do. And I think that's what this is about, is don't feel limited. Don't feel limited. The opportunity, especially in nature, because there's sticks and stones and rocks and leaves and dirt and dry mud and wet mud and every spiky plants and smooth plants. And it's free. It's all just there. There's so many things you can do and so many ways of being creative. So part of my workshops are also about not only giving the theory, but the practical techniques. So as much as non-directive is amazing, we can't always use non-directive because people can't keep their children in therapy for long because of finances. So sometimes we do have to use a more directive approach. So I try and teach that in the training as well, is that if we're going to use nature, these are some of the activities we can do to enrich the child's experience a bit more if we're
brilliant.
going to use Lego or sand.
We definitely look forward to that book. And I'm just going to let everyone know that I'm going to put some links to those books in the show notes so that you can have access to that. I'll also put Lauren's websites so that you can go and resource further. And I'm sure if you have any other questions or need some resources or pointing in a certain direction, that she'll be able to respond to those. And Lauren, if you have any other ones that you think would be beneficial, I can add those in. If you just let me know after this, I'll put them in the show notes. So people, please feel free to click on those. It's so important that we as adults get exposed to nature and play and be playful, and we can then give that to our children or our community, greater families, and whether we're parents or grandparents or siblings, there's so much we can offer, and nature is so abundant. That being in nature is our birthright, and I just encourage everyone to go and claim that.
Absolutely.
And Lauren's is testimony to how important that is in a therapeutic setting as well, which is just so invaluable for those kids who have had trauma and trying to deal with that.
But whether it's emotional, I think just before we end, nature, it's a sensory experience which helps with brain development. It with the problem solving and all the different challenges that you might face in nature, builds resilience. It soothes and calms the nervous system. And so many children, that's one of the biggest issues nowadays is everyone's nervous systems are so wired and functioning in survival mode that if we know that nature can calm our nervous systems, then we need to use that. We need to be calming. We probably wouldn't have half the illnesses that we have. The stress levels wouldn't be what they are. Children wouldn't be on as much medication as they are if we were in environments that were soothing and regulating our nervous systems. So those are just important things too. It's not only, I think there's my opinion or your opinion, there's research that's been done on how incredible it is for the development of children.
Absolutely. So even immune function, like you mentioned, brain
Definitely.
function, immune function, physical functioning, all of these aspects are just there's reams of information out there. And we don't have to read the studies. We just have to get out there
And
and that
experience
means
it.
yeah, go and carve out some time and just go, okay, guys, this weekend we're going to be doing this, or this day I've set aside this morning. Oh, it's raining. Well, let's go put the max on and go out. Get wet and cold. It's part of it.
Exactly.
So, Lauren, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your stories and your insights into kids and play, working through play and working with nature to help us reconnect to ourselves and build resilience. So I really appreciate all that you're doing for all the people and all the lives you touch, and through your work and through training others. Please carry on. Please keep sharing that, and I'll do my best to do the same on this side.
Yes.
Any parting wise words for us, and then we'll sign off.
I think I think we overthink things and we step in too quickly. And we complicate things. And I think as humans and adults and parents and caregivers of children, and we need to take a step back, and just appreciate what we have and simplify things. Just really try and simplify things, basic things like a screaming baby, putting a blanket under a tree and watching the tree above you. Little things like that. We can find peace, we can find connection, but just we don't need to complicate everything. And I think or look for these amazing solutions. Really back to basics. That's what we're missing is the basics.
Back to basics, back to nature. You're probably 90% of the way there.
Absolutely, definitely. So it's about not giving up and not being hard on yourself, but just being open to doing things a little bit differently.
Lauren, thank you so much for joining
Absolute
us,
pleasure.
and we appreciate.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely being here.